everyone, and welcome back to Sonic Historian for part 2 of our interview with Team Season 3 with Paul, Eric, and Gloria, as we talk more about the development of their fan continuation of the 3rd season of Sonic Sat-Am. Now, if you haven't listened to the first episode, see the link in the description to listen to the first one, because it's going to be a weird listen without the proper context. Still here? Great. So, at the beginning of the episode, we talked to Eric in greater detail about the inspirations behind writing Team Season 3, and then we take a deep dive with Gloria on the production of the show and the animation that is currently going into it.
Well, I was going to ask Eric, could you tell me, what your experience is in terms of, story crafting?
I guess you could say I'm self-taught. I went to college, actually, from 2007 to 2011, studying creative writing, which helped me, I think, to improve my overall craft. But in terms of strict experience, it's just sort of something I've been doing because I love to do it for more or less as long as I can remember.
Do you have any other sort of writing influences or any other TV shows that you could say that this show pays reference to? TV
I know
dramas,
big
animation.
I mean, obviously, the original cartoon itself is a pretty big influence, but I suppose that kind of goes without saying. I know that, in terms of a lot of how, I structure and pace it, I know that, a big influence back when I was starting the comic in 2009 was Avatar: The Last Airbender. I really liked how effectively that show was able to balance all its different dramatic elements together. The plot, the characters, the themes, they're all very carefully interconnected. And that, I think, was kind of the approach that I wanted to take in terms of how I wrote the series, yeah. So I think that one's a huge influence.
Any sort of live-action dramas? Or
live action, not quite so much, if only because there's just so much in terms of how you approach the structure of the story, the characters, the feel of the world. There's a lot that differs between comic books, animation, and live action TV. So, there are live action shows I can think of. The kind of late 90s supernatural dramas like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I know there's an extent to which that sort of thing does inform me a little bit, but I wouldn't quite say it's a direct influence, if only because it has to go through so many different filters to arrive at where, how I put into the writing, that it doesn't 100% translate as cleanly as it would with Avatar. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that you can definitely accomplish much different things within animation that you can't in most mediums because it is animation. But on the other hand, I specifically for the Sat-Am cartoon, such as the thematics that go behind Robotropolis, as opposed to Knot Hill,
yeah,
I would say that I definitely do see a very significant influence that comes from cyberpunk media, such as movies like Blade Runner and Scanner Darkly, that is carried over.
Oh, for sure.
Into the themes. So I'm just wondering how far we can stretch that sci-fi medium or that dynamic.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point to make. And also there's a heavy Star Wars element to it as well. Kind of the big, overwhelming kind of empire versus the small, scrappy rebels. So for sure, the kind of broad science fiction, that sort of thing, absolutely. You can feel that influence in there.
Is it political?
In a sense, I mean, I think it's not unfair to say that, a lot of art is political, even if it's not necessarily overt or in the way that you might expect. But there is, built into the premise, there's a whole thing about the dangers of industrialization, what is the relationship between civilization and technology? What is the importance of nature? Like that's kind of ground level stuff in this story. And it's definitely something that I like to explore in how I build, into how I delve into that world. I think that's actually a very important aspect of it.
Yeah, so that was actually my next question. How, like, is there any significant message that you wanna spread? I mean, now it sounds bad when I'm going to say, but is there any kind of actual message you want to spread through this project?
Art generally has a meaning and a message, so I don't think it's actually that sinister a thing to say. What is the message you want your art to convey? And what's sort of funny is... Huh?
No, just ignore me. I'm just... Anyways.
What's sort of funny is there are actually some bigger themes that I see in my vision of the story, in addition to the one that, again, kind of underlines the whole thing. It's, nature versus technology. Can they coexist? Should they? What does that coexistence look like? But it's a little tricky to talk about some of those just because a lot of it winds up being expressed less through the plot and more through the characters and how they develop. There are a lot of ideas I think about in that exact sense when I'm thinking about these characters and how they grow through these circumstances. And it's a little hard to talk about that just because I think it can get into spoiler territory. But I am actually very mindful of exactly that kind of thinking in how I write, for sure.
So, Gloria, what actually is your college or educational background in this regard?
I just graduated from Ringling College of Art and Design as a computer animation major. I have like a history of I can do every part of the animation pipeline, at least 3D. I'm familiar with traditional animation, although I don't have much experience with cleanup and color, although I have done some on my own in Photoshop, but it's not like vector-based, so I have a little bit more to learn in that. But I have like experience with all parts of the pipeline, so I kind of just, I can oversee parts and figure out, I guess that tends to be how I figure out, what's necessary, what isn't, what's gonna harm something else down the pipeline. And in storyboarding, you have to be extremely conscientious. I can't word. Anyways,
conscientious.
I have to be aware of what's. Yeah. I have to be aware of what's gonna affect people down the line, because whatever I put into the visuals of the storyboard, that is the blueprint. And the background artists are going to draw that background, and the animators are going to animate that. And so the more mistakes I make on the storyboard, the harder it's going to be down the line. But the reason I knew that was because I have experience from every part of it. So I also created a short film called Chasing Light. It's a 3D animated film, and I learned even more from that, just how important like cutting down is to be able to get everything done within the deadline with as much quality as possible for the shots that you can get through.
Chasing Light, is that related to Sonic at all, or is that more of your college project?
Oh, it's an original piece.
Oh, okay. I'm
it's
sorry.
About an alien flower who's trying to survive a dark planet by the light of these glowing dandelions, but this glow bee pollinates her light sources, and so she chases him to stop him.
All right, so now that we kind of have a foundation about how the show, or I guess the organization came together with Paul and Eric and Gloria, do you think you could describe like the process behind what makes an episode? Like, what is it? What's it inception? Like, where does it come from? I imagine that it probably starts with the script, or I guess maybe this is a Paul question. What, in terms of like being a director, how does like from start to finish start with a normal episode?
Well, basically, it started with a couple of us sitting down.
I can get this one.
Yeah, you go for it.
Okay. So, of course, it starts with the script, and oftentimes it's handed off to the character designers. And in this case, our characters were already designed, although Tim, our art director, he kind of revamped them a little bit. We picked the best of the previous seasons, like the best qualities to put in the characters. And around that time, I believe Tim was done working on them by the time he contacted me, although they had a few background characters he was still working on. But typically in an animation production, the character design phase is going on the same time as like the storyboarding phase. It really depends, but often the character designers take a first whack at it and go, hey, maybe this is our character. And then the storyboard artist starts sketching with that character that may or may not be complete, because by the time they start animating, things change. So in our pipeline, I created the entire storyboard before we started on animation, just to make sure that everything worked within the time limit, which is why I cut down so much. And we were actually under time. So what we do next in the animation pipeline is we have our background artists draw our backgrounds, and so that they can hand them off to the animators, and the animators can put their characters like on the solid plane. So one thing that comes before that is often layout, which is sometimes necessary, and I would draw a layout for our background artists so that they could get a good idea of the perspective and make sure that everything looks okay, and they kind of go through this critique process. And after that, it's given to our animators, or it's given to Keith, and Keith will do layout for the characters to make sure that they're the keys, which is the main poses of the characters, and he'll draw the main poses for the animation, and so that they can make sure that things flow together when the animators are working on it. And during that time, our background artists are painting, and then the characters are handed off to cleanup artists, and some of our animators are cleanup artists. And then they're either given, they could be given to colorists, which in our case, our colorists are usually our animators or cleanup artists. And in case you didn't know, cleanup artists do the line work, and they kind of just tidy up the animation, and they make it clean. So around that time, you have like a full animation of the character, you have a full painted background, and then it's given to the compositor, who pieces it all together and color corrects the character to make sure that it fits with like the background. It doesn't pop too much, or like it pops just enough. And then oftentimes our background artists will give us layers like foreground, middle ground, background. And so you'd put the character in the scene over the background, and then you put the foreground over the characters. And that's basically the final touch. And that would be what the final animation, like the final look, will look like. And that's like a really quick rundown of the animation process that we go through.
Who's actually working as the animation producer here?
Well, the producer, that'd be
Paul.
me.
Paul's the producer. I'm the director. Eric is the writer.
So,
It's true.
Paul, have you ever just like walked into like this production and like not liked what you've seen, just like tore everything apart?
For the most part, we've gone along pretty well. There's been a few cases where I've had to stop things, like, okay, whoa, let's sort of regroup ourselves here and go from there. Because when you're dealing with a team like this, and everyone has their own little bit they're doing, so there's been moments where I've had to get everyone to regroup. I was not either. There's a part that wasn't too fond of, or something like that. So it's happened, but really, we're a really core group of friends, and everything it's been, let's say, really smooth. Which I wouldn't expect is the industry. I wouldn't expect it to be the industry standard that way.
Yes, because this is a labor of love, I imagine that when you do have a team of animators, people doing storyboarding, and everything that Gloria just said, if things do go in the wrong direction, you really have to step in and tear it all down, or you put a stop to it. It's quite a significant
if
thing
things
to do,
go,
I feel.
Oh, it would be. But I think the nice thing is we all really work together, so if nothing gets too far ahead that I don't already see that I have to do that to. It's all like basically every single process of this as it's going involved. I am in contact and I see the background artists constantly. The animators, Keith's the animation director, but I'm constantly watching their work. I'm constantly, during the script process, I was involved constantly there. So every small little detail of this, I've overseen all of that. So it's never gotten to a point where a bunch of stuff was done and I've had to tear everything down, because I've been involved with every little detail from the start.
And so then for Gloria on that page or from your perspective, how significantly different does it feel to be an animator or working with writers? Is there a story that you want to tell? Well, I mean, like not.
I haven't animated for season 3 yet. I kind of just oversee a little bit like Paul. I kind of oversee and make sure things are working correctly. I would say Keith is definitely like more over the animation. I'm kind of like he'll show it to us, and if we have an issue, we'll mention it. And often, what a lot of our process is we'll get things back. Like I tend to oversee our background artists a little more, and Keith oversees our animators a little more. And so often, like if any of us have questions or concerns, like will this work? We run it by each other. And so, we talk a lot. So like we have great communication as a team, and it's not just, one of us like they call me the director, but it really is just, I'll have something done. I'll, ship a layout off to the team, but I get like constant, like, I have to make sure that this is good for everyone else. We get eyes on each other's work because that's how we catch problems, is by communicating. And sometimes I won't see something that someone else will. Sometimes someone will produce something that like I'll see. And so that's how we often prevent like bad things from happening.
How is the creative process, or perhaps the way that you approach the narrative, different from, say, Paul and Keith's position?
Oh, Paul and Keith's position. It would have been easier to say Eric's because he wrote the script.
It's true.
I mean that too. That'll be the next question then, or maybe that should be the question then. So I suppose then from you, who comes from a very, very different background, I'm not asking for conflict here, but how is it different, your approach to narrative?
Well, do you mean narrative for the story, or do you mean something as in regards to the pipeline, like?
The story itself.
Okay, the story itself. Okay. Honestly, I loved Eric's script. The only thing I wanted more of, and we got that sorted out, was just a solid, like a moral, a clear moral. Because to me, my mindset is that if what I'm making doesn't have, like, if I'm making a big project, like, and if it doesn't have a meaning behind it, like an important message, like, why am I making it? And that's kind of, because, like, my motto is, like, the light shines in the darkness. Like, there's good in dark times. And and so that seems to be a theme that I like to work with. And I like to show how, like, characters can overcome hardship, because this stuff that we make, these cartoons, they help people. The majority of people, like, get invested in these shows because they need an escape from reality because life is hard. So the thing about cartoons is, like, to me, is we are helping them by being an escape, but we can help them further by teaching them how to grow. And so I guess I tend to look for places to put more emotion. At least when I was storyboarding, I'm very I like facial expressions, and I like to make things I like to pull emotion into things because people will resonate with it more. And so I think that's probably how I adjusted with the narrative. I just try to make it appear, deeper. But honestly, Eric had an incredible script, so I don't think I improved it that much. So,
you said that you went to school for production or animation. So in your studies, what were some of the significant animators that you think influenced your work?
Oh, my favorite's Glenn Keane. He's
Really?
actually a Christian animator, which is really important to me. And a lot of his work is like very, like when he animated, for example, The Little Mermaid, and Ariel's reaching out, when she's singing "Part of Your World," she like reaches out through the top, and he's like, I imagined her, reaching out to the heavens. Like, that's when he animated that. He like animated it with, like, it's really hard to explain. But when I animate, I like to become so invested in the character. It's like I am that character in that moment. Like, so it's kind of like, it's just pulling pieces of yourself and just investing it fully into your work. And I think that's something that he inspired me the most, because I loved, there's so much more, but his work is like so smooth, and you can just feel like, you look at Tarzan, looking into Jane's eyes, and it's just like, wow, like there's something there.
You said that being a Christian is very important, or being a Christian or having a Christian message is very important to you. How has that been incorporated into your work?
Oh, one of my top messages, you'll see in my thesis film, I actually had to fight to keep a Bible verse on there because the faculty wanted me to take it down. It ended up actually being the theme of our entire graduation, which was amazing. But, the verse is, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it. And that, to me, has been such a powerful theme, because often at the darkest times in our lives is, like, it's when we grow and we become better, and, we learn something new, and that's like when the light comes in. And I think the thing is that in life, such hard times come and we dread it, when in some way we kind of should be looking forward to them, because that is when we will improve as people. And it's just,
is that intrinsically linked to being Christian, or?
Yes, it's based off or it's a Bible verse, John 1:5. But it's also just that verse in particular is like to me, it's a big direct link to just having faith, and and taking risks is really important in life as well. And so many people just freeze up at the fear of failure. And for me, I had the biggest fear of failure, and I had to work through getting over that. And the part that what got me through is that I trusted God. I was like, I'm gonna let go. I'm gonna be okay. I had to trust it, and I was literally willing to give up my. I didn't know. Okay, the one way I put it is, I didn't think I could pass. I wasn't sure if I'd pass my junior year, and that was a very difficult time for me. And I had to trust that even if I didn't, his plan for me would be okay, and I'd get through. What'd you say?
No, it's fine. Never mind. I was asking why was it difficult for you, but it's none of my business.
Oh, jeez. Well, I can actually share. I'm probably going to share more of this in the future, but that we were working on pre-production for my short film that came out, and I had a story that was very... Well, there's several reasons. I kind of defied the faculty with my story by, one, being completely original, and they had hammered into us, do things that have been done before, because you only have 2 minutes and people won't understand new things. And I was so determined to do something different. And also just, that was one main reason I had such a hard time getting my, what's it called? Like the opening to read. And what's it called? The setup. I struggled with my setup, and the faculty just weren't getting it. And they're very difficult, but I think even when they do get it, sometimes they say that they don't, just to make sure that other people who might struggle more with it will be able to get it. But anyways, I was having such a hard time, and I went into what they call do or die, which I had to get it done I had to fix the problem within 2 weeks, or I was gone. Because if we make less than a C- in that major, we're out of the major. So it's a very intense course. And another issue is they wanted me to remove my Bible verse, and I refused. And I was kind of, I was like, you know what? I had to accept. I'm like, if I don't make it, if I don't pass, if I don't get to go do what I want to do, then that's okay. So it was kind of a moment where I was like, God has a bigger plan for me. And that's something that in the stories that I tell, I like to say, you know what? Even in your dark times, you're going to be okay. Just trust you'll be okay, because life moves on. It's a roller coaster, but you'll learn, you'll grow. And that's something that I like to show other people, because that's what I experienced during the darkest times in my life. So I've gotten way more positive responses to it than any negative. So I'll keep fighting for it. So keep fighting to show it. So, anyways, I hope I didn't derail the conversation too much. I'm glad you asked though, because this is like a really important thing to me, and I don't talk about it enough. I just like to help people grow, and I know that Sad.am for one, the characters, and I believe and Eric especially was really good at handling this. The characters have a lot of room for growth because they are flawed characters. And to me, those are the best characters because they're more real and they can grow. And and it's done in a healthy way. And I think that's what makes Sad.am so great. And I think that's what's going to be so helpful about it.
So where was then your first experience with Sad.am?
I actually don't recall. I was probably around 9, probably younger, and I believe I watched some of the episodes. I don't even remember how we got them. I probably bought a DVD at Toys R Us, or one of my parents did. I don't know, but I also had a miniature comic book where they had the backstory of Bunny, and I always loved Bunny's backstory. And then when I saw I rewatched the entire series, I was like, they don't actually show Bunny's backstory. I was like, that was my favorite story. And so that was just an interesting tidbit. I feel like I grew up more on Sonic X. So
Wow.
Yes, huge Jenner. It was so interesting getting onto joining the team, and everyone's so in depth with Sad.am, and I was just learning more about it, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I like Sonic X, and some people were like Sonic X, I'm just like, well, I mean, I feel like it
It looks pretty, at least.
every show has its. It is. I feel like it was executed pretty well. There were some things that could have been improved, but for what it was,
that noise you keep making is clearly one of approval.
Absolutely.
What?
Continue, Gloria, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know what more to say. I grew up playing Sonic Adventure Battle. That's still my favorite video game. So yeah, I'm definitely a generational gap. I think in some ways that helps, because and I also have a younger sister, and so we're very close and we talk a lot, and so she's another generation gap, and so I can kind of understand what she's into, and I can tell what my generation's into, and Eric and Paul.
And right, now you've got us old farts sticking around to teach us about our time.
No, so it's just kind of helpful to kind of gauge who our audience is and what they want, so that we can make a product that all of them are will watch or enjoy. I'm not sure all of them will watch. Some of them will. Well, I'm sure people from every generation will. Was there anything else in relation to that? That was mostly, I did collect some Archie comics when I could, although I did not read them in order. I just got the ones that I found.
Okay, there's actually a lot to unpack there. I don't know if we have a lot of time. Maybe we need to do a separate interview with Gloria, because I feel like in terms of adding kind of Christianity to Sonic, that's an entirely different thing. Also, talking about Sonic X is another thing. Go on, Gloria.
Yeah, I'm not. I didn't mean I wasn't making a point to add Christianity to Sonic. It's more about I'm a Christian, and it's very important to me. And some things I learn as a Christian, I'm able to use and help improve the show. And it's I just like teaching good morals. I'm not trying to push it upon anybody. That's not what I want. So I just want to clarify there. People often cringe at Christianity because of for example, Christians who come across as too self-righteous, and I feel like a lot of people have struggled with backgrounds of people and are afraid of judgment. And it's a very unhealthy thing, and it's very harmful, because the real point of a Christian is to love others. And if you're treating someone badly, you're not loving others, and therefore you're not being Christian. So, and the other thing about it is that when we talk about good morals, the Bible is full of good morals, and like it's basically the basis of good morals. Like almost all of them, come from Jesus's teachings. And so I think like the majority of even kid shows in general are literally just referencing Jesus's teaching, whether or not people know it. So I think in that way, I think it relates. And even though like my dad is he's agnostic / atheist, and he even admitted to me that, like, a lot of the best stories are referenced from the Bible. And I've realized that in a lot of media that I see, a lot of the best stories pull things from it. And it just fascinates me.
What I particularly liked about Saddam and Sonic is that he was given a three-dimensional, kind of like, he was a character, he was a person, opposed to, like, when I watch something like Sonic X, the number one thing that bothers me about it is I call him no character Sonic, because he doesn't really seem like a person. He seems kind of like background wallpaper to me. I don't really get much out of that character. I don't really see his inner struggle, because often what I see, like, in terms of how writing is, a good character has like 3 levels of conflict, sort of the inner conflict, the personal conflict, and the extra personal conflict, where you kind of see this character, who has a character arc because he's having some problem because, like, one episode of Saddam is where, like, Sonic has a dream that Sally gets roboticized.
Oh, this is my favorite one. My absolute favorite episode of the entire show.
Personally, this is just my opinion. You can protesteth it if you like. I hate the way that episode ends, because I don't feel satisfied by the ending, but I feel like the setup for it is just brilliant. Where you see somebody like Sonic going through this problem of, like, this kind of this inner conflict of saying that, I'm worried that this character might leave my life. And I felt like it was really a great setup. And that's what I loved about Saddam. And I don't think you really see this in a Sonic show or a Sonic game today. This leads me to the question, are there any particular character flaws you feel we should see in the Sat-Am characters with Team Season 3?
Absolutely. It's one of the things I think about most in terms of how I write them. I think about, honestly, one of the ones, and, I'll be careful about this because I don't want to get too spoilery, but like one of the characters I actually find most interesting in that respect is Antoine, because, the natural reaction to him is he's a coward and he's kind of a lout, and he's like, he just sort of seems worthless, because in the original show, he's very much meant to be kind comic of the relief. Loud. Yeah, he's comic relief. And something I've always really appreciated about the Archie comics was that they explored his character and they found a new kind of depth to him through exploring, why is he a coward? How much of that is genuine fear? How much of it is projection? And, and I like the idea of exploring that with him and kind of seeing, like, well, is it cowardice or is it actually a pretty understandable reaction to, being in a really frightening situation where your life is constantly in danger. So I think it's really fun to play with the idea of character flaws and finding the depths at which they interact with all the other layers of the character. Because, like, one of the reasons Sonic's Nightmare, one of the episode you were referencing with the dream, one of the reasons that is like my number one favorite episode of the show is it hugely informs what I think of when I think of Sonic's character, because the obvious level is, he's really cool. He's always in control. He's always one step ahead. And then you see that episode and you actually realize that the thing that keeps him up at night, the thing that haunts his literal dreams, is the idea that he might fail. And suddenly all that coolness and strength, you realize how much of it is him trying to make sure nobody sees how scared he is. And I think that's really interesting. It's very fun to work with that kind of depth.
Gloria, did you have something to add?
Oh, I Eric put it so well. Like, all the characters have really deep flaws. A fear of failure is a big, like, what do you call it? Flaw. And probably the majority of the characters as well. Like Sally, like, she's leading these people. She could lead them to their deaths, So, well, not deaths, I guess more like roboticization, but...
Which is a kind of death.
Yeah, it is. It's like they're losing their humanity, basically. And so and another big thing is I talk about this a lot for Hannity. I talk about this a lot on streams. Like Sonic's and Sally's characters and how they complement each other. Sonic is extremely like impulsive and Sally overthinks.
Yeah.
And while those things are sometimes good, like Sonic, being impulsive, he can, react quickly, and Sally being overthinking allows her to strategize. They're also big flaws because Sonic runs into danger and Sally like overthinks herself into a hole where she'll get like really down, and they help each other out of that. And it's like it's just a sort of like it's just throughout the show, it's just the character flaws are so like ingrained and like important, and the way that like the lessons are taught, even subtly, like it really shows like growth. And there are like lots of flaws, but they're the good kind of flaws. Like they're the ones you could really work with, and they're also common, so they're helpful for more people.
They're dramatically interesting, and they help us to recognize they help us to recognize what about these characters makes them so alive to us. To kind of spin off a little bit from what Gloria was saying, I think actually one of the things about Sally that makes her, not an especially controversial opinion for a SatAM fan, I would say Sally's my favorite character, and she's definitely my favorite character to write. Because I think one of the really interesting, there's so many interesting layers to her, and one of the ones that really sticks out to me in exactly this way is a good friend of mine once said that she feels like the core of Sally's character is responsibility. She takes responsibility for herself. She takes responsibility for others. And something that I really like to explore with her is how that virtue, that defining element of what makes her so strong can also become, there's a dark side to it. And there's this line where the line between self-sacrifice and self-destruction can get really blurry. And I really have a lot, like, in terms of what speaks to me as a writer, I really enjoy exploring that dichotomy with her a lot.
Right. Well, because then let me ask you this. What's your opinion on, like, IDW kind of removing Sally from, the comics? Because, obviously Archie died because of the Penders case, or maybe
Archie died for a bunch of reasons.
Yeah, it's probably not just Penders.
You could do several episodes on just that one specific topic. It's funny. In terms of specifically removing the Archie characters, it's, obviously I have a lot of attachment to them, so it's sad to see them go. But I also do at least recognize that some of that is just that their hands are a little tied. The extent to which they can or can't use them isn't very clear. Archie Comics ended was because the relationship between Archie and Sega broke down. It means that Sega's not necessarily going to be interested in revisiting those characters. So in terms of IDW specifically removing them, it's not something I like, but I at least appreciate that A, they've been able to continue telling really strong stories regardless. B, they've introduced a lot of really fun new characters of their own. I really like basically all of the new characters that IDW has introduced. I think are really interesting. And so as sad as I am to see these characters who I really love go, I at least appreciate that the comic itself is still really strong.
Right.
You want to hear my joke theory?
Yeah, let's hear your joke theory.
By all means, let's get some jokes in here.
The lore got too deep for Sega's taste.
Yeah, Sega's relationship
I
with the
think
whole
so.
idea of lore is
Anyone else?
weird.
Can I ask you also, what do you think of the Fleetway comics?
Me?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Nobody's
well,
read them.
Actually,
I still need to get into them.
It's up.
Of all, I'm kind of with Radley on this one. Of all the different incarnations of Sonic, I think Fleetway is one of the ones I'm least familiar with. I haven't really read the comic that much in depth. I will say, I absolutely love the Fleetway version of Amy Rose a lot from what I've seen of it. And even more importantly, I love the idea. I love Fleetway's conception of Supersonic.
Yeah, that's interesting, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way to use that idea.
I barely know the Archie comics. Literally. I'll be honest, like the Archie comics.
I believe that's what professionals call an irony, Paul.
Oh, okay. Put it this way: I barely know anything Sonic related except for Saturday M. I never played the games. I never read the comics. I never did anything.
Wow.
Today. Oh yeah, no, that's. And I run a Sonic site, so get that.
In fairness, you run a Sonic site dedicated to the version of Sonic you know best, so
Well, it's the only version of Sonic that I know. I know a bit of Sonic.
that would be, by definition, the one you know best.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, like I never had a.
Paul's like, there are other versions of Sonic?
Yeah, like what? What are you guys talking about this entire time? I've been silent, going like, these guys are crazy. Like, what kind of crap are they talking about? No.
What's a Fleetway?
Yeah, no, just trying to keep all this stuff straight. It's a nightmare.
Look, it's not that complicated, okay? America has 3 completely distinct versions of Sonic the Hedgehog, all of which existed at around the same time, none of which have anything to do with each other, but all of which reuse a lot of the same terms, ideas, and characters. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Well, I mean, when I'm talking about, like, when you... Well, I mean, like, when it comes to, like, you know, you have the Fleetway comic, and then you have, like, the Shogakukan comic from Japan, which not a lot of people know too much about, which is also, like, it has a story that's just out there, that's, like, nobody really talks about. Is that the one where
Sonic's in a rock band?
No, it's the one where he's what is it? He's like a 16-year-old boy, or he's really young.
Yeah, Nicky, with the glasses.
Nicky, yes, that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, and Sonic is, like, his superhero alter ego.
Yeah, but that's him from the future, and he only comes back at certain moments in his life when he needs help. It's very bizarre.
Okay, that's a new one. The fact that he comes from the future is a new wrinkle I had not known about.
Oh, yeah, no. I wanted to do a podcast episode with this, but the guy, he canceled because he had some problem. But no, one thing I've done, this is kind of what instigated this entire podcast, was I was on, I think it was your Discord. Maybe it was yours, or maybe it was Sonic Archie Online. I remember seeing, like, somebody posting a Nikki, like an Amy, or I think it was Bernadette or something, or Brenda. I forgot the character's name. And I think it's Brenda, the Sonic's mom.
The sad part is, so the only, well, see, there's 2 of those names could in fact be Sonic's mom, but I think you're thinking of Brenda.
That's right. Bernadette's the Archie one. See, this is why I say I get really confused when it comes to the lore and like which character is which and which property belongs to which, you know, and which one the Sega decided to go with and which one that the fans went with. And then you have Sonic Archie Online, which is its own thing, and you have Sonic Legacy. And, you know, keeping all of it straight is, you know, you gotta like you gotta put this in order somehow. Anyway, the story I'm trying to tell here
Maybe
is...
that's why Sega doesn't like it.
Yeah, I think you're right. So the thing is that the story here is that I think it was in your Discord, maybe it was in someone else's, but they were saying that, there's some guy who's trying to track down all the rest of the Shogakukan comics, because the ones that are on the internet, they're incomplete, and I found a link, or a friend of mine, I joined this group that they basically said, let's try to find these. And they found me a link to go to the National Diet Library here in Japan. It's like one of the biggest libraries in the whole country. Like they have work there that's like dates back all the way from like the year 700. And so basically if there was a book that was created in Japan, they probably have it. So I was able to track a lot of these down, and then I kind of got to figure out, wow, this lore is really complicated. I mean, especially if you're going to go with it, if you're going to say this one is canon, you know.
I don't consider
Good luck.
the
Good luck
Soul
figuring
Gakukan
that one out.
stuff as being exactly lore. It's more of just well,
It was just to sell a product, right?
I mean, it's as much lore as anything else.
Yeah.
what is lore now, man?
David's twin brother.
I mean, I read those Shogakukan comics and like I was like, what the?
There's our first beep.
What is lore?
It's okay.
Yeah, well, it definitely deserves it.
I'll put a Sonic ring on there.
Yes, perfect.
I love that.
Perfect.
That's awesome. I mean, I'll be like, what
Oh my
the?
goodness. Yes.
Yeah. I guess this kind of makes me beg to ask the question, do you kind of have to be in love with this process in order to, like, really get it right?
I don't think you necessarily have to be in love with it to get it right. Like, people, like, a lot, even, people who, being in love with it will make it so much better. Let's just put it that way. You can get it done without being in love with it because to some people it becomes just a job. But the best way, I think, is to absolutely be in love with it. I think that is the only way I got through my film through as good as it was because I loved my characters just, up till the end. And in Sonic, I boarded the episode like over a summer and like with the majority of it, there was like a few more sequences I had to take a little more time on. But, being in love with your work, cause like, I like to point this out a lot. Love is sacrifice. So if you love something, you're going to sacrifice more time and effort into it than if you didn't love it. So of course it's going to be better if you love it.
I mean, you just did.
I mean, it's all dependent on the it's all dependent on the person. Everyone has their own struggles. Most artists like struggle with hands. I struggled with hands for the longest time. Now I just draw them. Like, I've drawn them so much to the point where I'll just draw them and I'm like, oh, this is nothing. And I was even like, I could even erase it. Like, no big deal. And it blew my mind that I had gotten to this point because years ago, I struggled just so much with hands. But it's really just a process of like, if you keep going at it, okay, you know what the things that you struggle are? Hammer down on those things. So like, take a week to just do a few every day. Like, if you struggle with line art, like, if you have a bunch of sketches, just get those sketches and just line at least one a day or like even more. Because the more repetition you have, especially with the things that like you're afraid of doing, like that you struggle the most with, you'll start to see yourself improve in those areas and you'll grow more confident with your work.
Okay.
I had to draw pages and pages of hands. So
I think maybe that's what is it? I kind of, I was thinking about this all week when I was writing about it in my Discord, like, just how so many characters wear gloves all the time. Like how Sonic wears gloves, like white gloves. And I can't stop thinking about it. Like, and then I'm starting to think about, like, why does every character wear white gloves? Like, what is this supposed to symbolize? But I'm not going to get into it here. But I can understand a lot of animators that kind of...
White gloves, they're in the forest. How does it stay clean, man?
I can't help
These are
but
questions.
like Sonic and Mario, like, and characters like that. I can't help but feel like they probably got it from Mickey Mouse. But like, there's also like Full Metal Alchemist. Apparently, the creator draws gloves on their characters because they didn't like drawing hands. And so gloves kind of made it easier because you could have those wonky wrinkles and people just accept it because it's a glove. Although I will say, like, for Mickey Mouse and Sonic and Mario, it's just like they tend to be, most people who work on those things are already like really solid draftsmen who draw hands well. So I don't know why they did it, but I feel like I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure Sonic took a lot of elements from Mickey Mouse and
Felix the Cat.
I don't know, like, yeah, and white gloves. I'm pretty sure Mickey Mouse was the thing, but I could be wrong. There could have been something. Mickey Mouse probably got it from someone else that we don't know. So
Okay. So my last question here is, Glory, what would you say it is that inspires you in terms of direction that you like taking with the show? Is there anything that you feel like when you feel stuck, or sometimes like, okay, like what you were talking about earlier, where you were saying things like, I have to figure out how to draw Robotropolis, based upon the show's inconsistency with, the way some of the buildings look. What is it that, kind of gets you through it in terms of like inspiration?
Inspiration? Well, honestly, I think it's kind of a given the show in general. Like, that's where I get most of my information. But I've always been very, like, intuitive with art. Like, I'm not a kind of artist that requires references most of the time. Like, and if I'm drawing something I've never drawn before, I might, like, look at a reference for a little while, and then I'm good. And so I think the thing is that after looking at all the images, for example, of like Robotropolis, I kind of got an idea of what needs to be where, and I kind of just trusted my gut and like rather than fully relied on the show. Like I found the most important landmarks, I found all the references that I could, but from then on, it was just kind of like I had to make some of my own landmarks just, to fill in the blanks. Yeah, I'd say. Was there more to that question?
No, I mean, I'm just generally interested in the way artists work and how they put together a project. Because I understand that sometimes you hit a block where you're drawing something and then you're like, wait, what is this supposed to look like? Like, what am I supposed to... Like, maybe you've seen some of those memes where it's like, there's a picture of this like little girl or who's like thinking about art. Oh, it's so great. And then actually doing the art and she's like crying when like trying to draw a picture. I don't know if you go through that struggle at all. I'm sure everybody does, but...
Oh yeah, I struggle. I'd say one thing that gets me through probably is that when I get into a slump, I have to stop and ask myself, like, why am I doing this? What am I trying to say? And often in the art, like even in the background art, I did a little like when Keith started making the color scripts, he did a fantastic job, by the way. But when he started, he came to me for like a lot of like questions regarding like what he should do, and a lot of my responses were very like when it came to the color palette. We decided that the color purple was the color of evil because Nagus and Snively, like they both wear that color, and there's like a scene in the show. I feel like we've released some images of it, but it's like Sally and Sonic sitting next to each other, and there's like moonlight, and there's also like the torchlight, and so there's like this blue glow and this orange glow, and I was like, okay. And Sally in this scene is feeling a little down, or like, she has like she's not what's the word? She's having conflict in herself. So her conflict is going to represent the orange, the fire, and Sonic's calmness is representing the calm moonlight. And so it was kind of like when we were working in those shots, it was kind of like, what are we feeling in this moment? When Sally turns and looks at Sonic, you'll probably want a little bit more of that, fire. And, when Sonic's calm, you'll have that soft moonlight. And it kind of just, it puts an emotional feeling into the scene that kind of just really boosts what's going on. And so so when you really think about like what you're trying to say, that can really inform your art and what to do next.
Right. No, I could definitely see that. Like kind of having contrasting colors kind of with different characters kind of really does paint a story in terms of like storytelling. Would you say you often see this in a lot of, I'm sorry, I forgot his name. The guy who did Little Mermaid, Glenn Martin. What was his name?
Keane.
Glenn Keane. Thank
Glenn
you.
Keane.
Oh, you mean Glenn Keane?
This is why I do this podcast. Everybody's here to correct me.
I think like no, it's fine. For me personally, absolutely. I animated some characters at my college once, and one of the guys that was asking, they were just like, how do you animate your characters so well, or something like that. And I was just like, I like to animate them like they have a soul, because it makes them more alive than just being moving puppets. You know what I mean? It's like, this has thoughts and feelings and emotions, and it's like, it's so much deeper. And I think that tends to drive like a lot of my work in my direction. Because it's just like, what are these characters thinking? What are they feeling? What is the story we're trying to tell? And just push that with everything that we've got. And in doing storyboarding, it's like, placing the characters. Like, if you want a character to feel small and insecure, and you want a character to feel like a bully, you'll draw them like, you'll have one shot. Well, you'll have maybe the shoulder, a reverse shot, a shoulder of the bully, and he'll look huge, and you're looking down. He's looking down on the little, the little guy, and you're wanting that character to feel small, so you have to make him look small. And then you'll have a reverse shot from the little character's perspective, and he'll be looking up at this giant mass, So it's really all about, like, what is the character feeling? How can I inform that with the camera placement? And it's like, what is the story you're trying to tell? And then you have to focus on, like, whatever the object or the character is. And there's a lot of, like, if you want emotional depth, you want a close-up. And, like, if you want comedy, you want to make your staging really flat. It's all about, like, what's the story? Like, everything serves the story. So, like, everything, whatever Eric wrote, is translating to what we have. But whatever is furthering the messages, whatever's furthering the point, informs all of the art direction. I hope that was the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's really well spoken. I mean, I often look for I try to find people who could articulate whatever it is, and particularly people who can draw really well. I often find people who draw really well or who tell a story really well. They often can articulate, like, how it is that you put something like this together. So having that context really does help. I'm sure it helps others too.
As far as the whole season 3 team in general, though, like, I guess this was one of our original questions, but how hard is it to coordinate based on different locations and time zones then?
Good question.
It has its moments sometimes. I mean, Discord definitely helps out, and just email and all that stuff. But like Keith's in Italy, one of our background artists is down in Brazil. We have a lot of Americans on board. I believe myself and Megan are the only Canadians on board at the moment. She's back east. No one in Asia or anything like that. So really it's mostly, we got guys in the UK. But for the most part of it, we're able to communicate quite well. Like I said, Discord's been a big help because at least you just sort of keep constantly updating, right? So we have a few set times where we go, like, okay, guys, group meeting this Saturday. We'll try to coordinate it so it'll be like, poor Keith, usually he's up like half the night, but it'll be like 7 o'clock my time, which will end up being like 5:30 in the morning for him or something like that. But that's usually when he wakes up anyways. So coordinating, it can be a hassle, but for the most part of it, we actually haven't had that many issues with it. With the more staff we get, the more, like, especially with animators, now we're getting animators all over the place too. And again, this is where Discord comes into effect, where we can just post stuff online, tag everyone or tag who we want to, and when they get a chance that day, they go up, they see it, and they go from there. And it's a lot better than going through email or anything like that. So Discord's been it's been the thing that actually patches us all together.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you if you have any hints to help me out with this, because seeing as I live in a much different time zone than everyone else, it does get significantly different in trying to schedule these kind of meetings. And
it gets hard, but like I said, the Discord's nice just because of the chatting on it. Trying to get actual scheduled meetings. We used to do it more often, but now because of time zones and stuff like that, now we only do it when maybe not once a week, maybe every 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks we'll have a larger meeting, and all of us will kind of be online at the same time. But this is only the core crew, like the animators, they work separately. So we're only talking the core group of us, which there's only about 6 of us, 7 of us.
So my last question is for Gloria. I guess last 2 questions. My last one here is, Gloria, so because you come from an art background, how do you feel your art complements the Sonic Sat-Am style?
Well, I don't know if you mean like my art style or just the way that I interpret the information. I'd say one of the main things that I think it complemented for the show was that Sat-Am actually really struggles with consistency. And their backgrounds, almost every background, all the shots, they look different. And so one of the things that I decided with the show is we need to try to keep things as consistent as possible. And so I pulled reference images from the original show of all the locations, and I tried to find the ones that shared similarities. And I made a very basic map of Robotropolis so that we could understand like where our characters are, where they're going, and so that our background artists could like work through it. And in doing that, Robotropolis is often just a bunch of shapes, like squares and ovals, and they don't have they have very few specific landmarks. And so what I had to do was go through and I found the most iconic landmarks, and I was like, okay, these are the landmarks that are going to be in the show. Like, these are the ones that are going to be on the map because these are recognizable. And since everything else wasn't consistent, it was kind of like I just was able to pull from the things that I saw and put them in. And sometimes it got a little like, we didn't have any reference on where certain parts of locations. And so they had to be like, new. And so I think that is one of the biggest things I brought was, or my background was consistency. And
consistency is one thing that Saturday.
I would also add.
Sorry, Gloria. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, they did not. Honestly, Underground did a better job. With like locations, I actually pulled locations from Underground to help me with Sat AM backgrounds, because they were more consistent. So, I would also say that there was sometimes like being a storyboard artist, I don't have to have the characters perfectly on model because they're just going to be redrawn by, Keith, and the animators. And so it's more about character placement, but I tried to get them at least close and as appealing as I could so that if anything happened or went wrong, like, the animators could, if they had to, pull directly from my storyboard and it would still look okay. So in doing that, I have noticed like a lot of the ways that I draw Sonic slightly different often, and I have seen like a little bit of that reflected in some of the animators' work. Although it's nothing like if it was off model to a point, Tim would point it out. So like I know it's not a big deal, but there is also like I drew Bunny in a way that Tim really liked. It was like I drew her calves a little longer, and Tim decided he really liked it, so he actually put it into the final model sheet of Bunny. Like he lengthened it, and it was just. We also had a discussion on like giving shadows in their eyes. Is that the kind of answer you were looking for?
Yeah, that's more than enough. I mean, I'm interested to hear more about. You said that SatAM has a lot of consistency issues, and you kind of had to fix a lot of those when you were doing a lot of the art.
Yeah, and because in storyboarding, it's all about like knowing where your characters are so you don't confuse your audience. And in the original show, it's just like some of the backgrounds just weren't consistent, and I just knew that was like, if we make sure that these backgrounds are consistent, it's just going to be like more readable, it's going to look more professional, because the majority of cartoons like in these modern times are consistent, and a lot of the backgrounds are reused. So we did. Were you trying to say something, Paul?
Yeah, I was just going to say that like when we started doing this, especially when you started doing this, we realized that how actually inconsistent Sonic Saturday was. I mean, even the stuff as far as Robotnik's chair, that changes so many times through the 2 seasons. Like, there's just some things that just every episode, like the different animators or artists working on it just went their own way and did their own thing. It was kind of bizarre. There was a kid watching it, you never really noticed, and even as an adult watching it, I never noticed. But when you start trying to get designs down, you're like, oh, this is a design. Somebody else goes, but I thought this was the design. You look at it, you're like, well, what episode is that from? Look over, oh crap, okay. So now we can find the most common of the designs, which in some cases there is no most common of the designs. So now you take bits of each design just to try making it work. And that became a big headache for quite a few things. Robotropolis was a big one. That was a huge undertaking by Gloria because nothing made sense throughout the show. Robotics chairs, one that actually, honestly, we're still fighting with that one. We're hiring a 3D animator to actually do a 3D animation of it, just so we can give it to our current animators, just so they can have an exact model replica, so they could work with it. Because
we just can't find an exact model replica because it constantly changes. There's always something that changes on it. And there's other things in the show that did the exact same thing. They just, one episode it looks like this, next episode it looks like this. And you're going, why? Why is there no... It's always changing. That's the show. What the show is really bad for is that.
Hello, hello. If you're still here, thanks for listening this far into the interview. You might as well subscribe at this point. I mean, leave the video a like, write a comment on who you'd like us to interview next on Sonic Historian. And if you have time, it would mean a lot to us if you gave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, or even as a YouTube comment to tell us what you think of the show. I ask because it's hard to engage with people to see what it is that piques their interest. Mostly because I can't see you. This being said, see you next time, guys and gals.